Listen, America, this is Chris Murphy. Center stage.
Chris Murphy is also among them and is now calling for Israel to change course in its war with Hamas.
Listen carefully.
In his statement, he wrote, in part, the current rate of civilian death inside Gaza is unacceptable and unsustainable. I urge Israel to immediately reconsider its strategy.
Let me interrupt. Chris Murphy took the Houthi off the terrorist watch list and pledged himself to the Muslim Brotherhood through CARE, Connecticut. Did you hear what I just said? He not only overthrew Venezuela, he overthrew Ukraine.
And shift to a more deliberate and proportionate counterterrorism campaign. Joining us now, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. He's a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator,
he is chair of Iran, Iraq, Ukraine, and Israel of Foreign Relations.
Appreciate your time. I have to be honest, your statement last night, which came before the letter from 13 senators, was a take notice moment. You are a critical voice inside the Democratic Party.
He is a progressive
party on these issues. You are a critical voice that the White House pays attention to. Why did you decide to put
He is the voice of Biden
out this statement now?
So let me first be clear. I don't think we can square the world's moral order. I don't think we can protect America nor Israel if Hamas isn't held accountable. And so I believe that Israel has to continue the fight to end Hamas's military capabilities to be able to strike Israel again. I simply believe that the current level of civilian casualties inside Gaza is too high, both from a moral perspective and a strategic perspective. What we have learned in our...
Too high. Now, what's actually happening is NATO is going to defund Israel if Israel does not listen to Chris Murphy's request to stop the bombing.
Our own country's counterterrorism operations is that when you are too permissive of civilian casualties, you kill a lot of militants, but you also...
Watch his eyes. He blinks about 10 times per second.
Create a lot of terrorists as well, because that civilian harm becomes bulletin board material for terrorist recruiters. And so I want to see Hamas's military capabilities defeated. I want to see Israel keep up this fight. But with 3,000 children dead inside Gaza today, that number is just simply too high. And I think it's time for Israel to be more targeted.
Murphy is pro-Palestine. Blumenthal is pro-Palestine. They were pro-Iran deal. They funded Iran's proxies, which is Hamas, through Qatar.
Targeted and more thoughtful in the calculus it makes when it decides where and when to strike.
So for the purpose of clarity, because in these types of situations in particular, the language is so important. Precision is important in the language. You're talking about shifting of strategies being more targeted. The letter you signed on to with 12 of your colleagues calls for a cessation of hostilities. There have been talks about a humanitarian...
Or they will defund Israel.
...and pause. These are not ceasefires, correct? You're not calling for a ceasefire.
That's correct. Hamas needs to be held accountable, and
he is calling for a ceasefire
right now. A ceasefire, which sounds to me an open-ended cessation of hostilities, would simply allow Hamas to regroup to attack Israel again. And you heard yesterday directly from the leader of Hamas that Hamas is not.
His last speech was that he wanted a ceasefire. Now he says he doesn't want a ceasefire.
Done, that they are intent on murdering more Israeli civilians. And so I just don't believe there's a choice to be made between continuing to take the fight to Hamas and reducing the number of civilian casualties and being able to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. There are going to be civilian casualties here. That is a consequence primarily of Hamas hiding itself in civilian infrastructure. But when you decide to hit a target, you have to consider the value of the target versus the scope.
Hamas had a base underneath a hospital. Underground. What did Murphy do?
of the harm to civilians. And I think there are many cases, whether it be the refugee camps or some of these apartment buildings, where the civilian casualty numbers have just been far too high.
The importance of public statements from U.S. officials, from folks like yourself, as Israel conducts these operations, how much of this is trying to some degree, lay the groundwork for what comes next and try and maintain relationships in the region? And I ask that because you heard from Jordan's foreign minister saying he's going to tell Blinken the war must stop. You've heard public statements from traditional U.S. allies in the region saying things publicly we assumed they would in opposition to Israel's course of action, but also growing harsher and harsher in their condemnation.
So I think this is a really difficult needle to thread, because we are, of course, first and foremost, trying to hold Hamas accountable. Second, we are trying to stop the spread of this conflict. We do not want Hezbollah coming in from the north.
Hezbollah is coming in from the north. Hezbollah is far more dangerous than Hamas. Hezbollah has a history of hating America. Okay, they are biding their time, and Murphy is flip-flopping and not supporting Israel. This is not a support of Israel, folks.
It is very hard, if not impossible, for Israel to fight a two-front war. But then lastly, we have to think about what comes next in Gaza. And if Hamas is displaced, both militarily and politically, then there has to be a follow-on governance structure inside Gaza.
I heard from 3 FBI agents that Murphy's skimming money off the top of Ukraine. Now, if that is true, and why are they sitting at my dinner table telling me that? Okay? They've been to my house. They are telling me these things. And I'm not sworn to secrecy. No. But I do have a judge telling me what I can and cannot post. I do have a local DA falsely claiming that I threatened to blow up the Bridgeport court, which I never did, and I never would do. And I was assaulted by that DA and 10 marshals, and they stole the evidence of the Corey Coopersmith case, where Connecticut sold stolen sniper rifles from Greenwich to the Libyan army, which Chris Murphy is totally aware of, that Mark Stern was murdered for doing it. Mark Stern's plane blew up. It was fully loaded with sniper rifles from the Danbury airport, and the news won't cover it because Murphy has a gag order, so to speak, against Hearst Media, which operates 54 of our 58 newspapers in the state of Connecticut. We have a problem that Mr. Censorship here of the GEC budget of the Department of Homeland Security is registering illegals to vote through DHS, through CISA, and the Department of Motor Vehicles of Connecticut. We have a problem here. He is got his top priority is undocumented people coming from Hamas. Chris Murphy brought Hamas to Venezuela. That's a fact. Now Venezuela is sending its army through our border for Chris Murphy, Mr. Open Border of the Department of Homeland Security, Senate Subcommittee Chair, Chris Murphy. Let's listen to his conclusion.
And it is likely that Israel's Gulf neighbors, its Arab neighbors, would need to take part in helping to stand up that government. And so you want to be able to keep those countries willing to come in and help stabilize Gaza after this military operation is over. And so when these civilian death counts are so high, it makes it more likely that there's a second front open, potentially in the north, and it makes it less likely that you're going to have other Arab partners come in and help on the back end. And I think that's in part why Secretary Blinken is back in the region again.
You just said that it's very hard, if not unlikely, that Israel could fight a two-front war coming in about an hour and 15 minutes. We're expecting Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, to give his first significant public statement. Does that mean that if Hezbollah launches that second front, the U.S. would have to be involved?
So that will be a decision the president will make, and that'll be a decision that Congress makes. Obviously,
the brain-dead Biden, okay, is now being asked to step down from Himes. Congressman Himes caused Afghanistan and created the Russia collusion hoax with Chris Murphy, working together to undermine the Congress, the House of Representatives, and the U.S. Senate. So we need to vote him out. This guy is the most dangerous, inept liar that there is.
We have moved significant assets to the region to deter both Hezbollah and Iran from entering this war.
Excuse me. Murphy met with Iran in Hamburg, Germany, which is the CISA head of Germany, for election fraud in the United States. Murphy met and violated the Logan Act by supporting Iran against the Trump administration during the Trump administration. Murphy is a liar. Scott Bates is his right-hand goon. Scott Bates committed treason multiple times. Scott Bates is in Turkey all the time. Why? Whatever Chris Murphy's doing through Scott Bates is illegal because Scott Bates is not a foreign relations registered agent. It is treason. Murphy's lobbyist, Leiter, is Hunter Biden's lobbyist, is Joe Biden's lobbyist, is Jim Himes's lobbyist. This is a disaster. Leiter is from Connecticut. Leiter's employees have worked with Ben Proto in the GOP. They are working together. It's that simple. Listen carefully.
My sense is that, the evidence may not suggest Iran knew about Hamas's attacks ahead.
Evidence does suggest that Iran is funding Hamas.
Of time, if Hezbollah launches an attack from the north, that would be done with Iranian support and knowledge and permission. So we're trying to send a message right now to Iran and to Hezbollah.
Permission granted by Murphy to defund Israel through the UN sanctions. Fact.
That there could be consequences, not just from Israel, but from the United States if they decide to enter this conflict.
Senator Chris Murphy, we always appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
He spends his time undermining America. He is a super progressive. He needs to be voted out, and he needs to be defunded himself. His net worth is skyrocketing, okay? I'm told he's worth $480 million after 12 years, when he was worth $300,000 when he was voted in. It's a problem, folks. Follow the money. He's getting money from Act Blue, from Antifa, through Black Lives Matter. This guy is a disastrous traitor, progressive, lying to you, and it's obvious to me since I've been following him for so long. This guy is public enemy number one. He needs to be voted out, and you need to get signatures to get me on the ballot, because the Republican Party is blocking me, but they can't block me through America First. Please share this video. Please share this video, because what it's going to lead to is the only salvation to support Israel. We need to support Israel, keep the war in the Middle East. And thank you for listening.